everyone, and welcome to Homo Spiritus, a podcast about all things spiritual, especially about integrating nonlinear, non-ordinary states of consciousness experience into our daily limited human life, and to learn how to bring what we learn or experience from our spiritual experiences into the evolution of consciousness here on the planet. And today our topic is why me and what for? Why did this experience happen to me? And what am I supposed to do with it now? What was it for? As a spiritual integrator coach and in my work with experiencers through ASSIST, the American Center for the Integration of Spiritually Transformative Experiences, I get asked questions a lot from just about every experiencer that we talk to. They want to know, why did this happen? What does it mean? Am I crazy? Am I special? Am I supposed to save the world? Do I have a role in making this a better place? What was it for? So we have two very special guests with us today that I'll be introducing in just a minute. I'm very excited to have them both on. They are both experiencers who have integrated their experiences quite well into their daily life, and we're going to have them talk to us about their integration experiences and what it's changed for them in their daily life. Before we do that, though, I want to give ASSIST a bit of a plug. I am the current board president for the American Center for the Integration of Spiritually Transformative Experiences. You can find us online at www.aciste.org. And if you're looking for integration resources with a possible awakening process, spiritual emergence, or spiritual urgency that you may be experiencing, you can find a lot of good help on that website if you go to our resource page. Also, I am a spiritual integration coach, and I work as a life and spiritual integration coach and have since 2007. And I have an integration resource page on my website listing books that have been helpful for me. I'll be adding some more. I've got more on my shelf that will be going up on the website. And also some movies that you might consider interesting that deal with the issue of awakening, and some other organizations. So those lists are kind of a living document, will be added to. You can find them at my website, www.elizabethjsabet.com. Well, again, thank you for joining me today for Homo Spiritus, and I'd like to bring on now Elizabeth. Elizabeth, are you with us?
I am. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, I'm so glad that you're here. I met Elizabeth through ASSIST. We met, I can't remember if we met on the phone or at the 2016 conference first. Do you remember, Elizabeth?
Yeah, on the phone first, and then at the conference, and then many phone calls.
And many phone calls after. Phone calls and video chats, that's right.
Yes.
Elizabeth, could you tell us about your spiritual experiences, your awakening process?
Yes, thank you. I'd love to share that. My awakening came in 3 parts, and I didn't know what was going on at first. The first part of it was when I was about 33. It lasted a week, and the second part was several years after that. It lasted a month, and the third part, which was like more of a full awakening, lasted 17 months, and it was very difficult to get through. So the first one started when I was having a lot of eating problems and some problems in my marriage, and I made a choice to change a situation that I was in, and I decided to just let it be okay. And I felt this shift, and I went outside, and everything felt lightened. It was snowing, this beautiful light snow, and I was having all these eating problems, and I went to my parents' house in another state, and my dad took me to see this energy worker, and she ran this white light down me, and I didn't know anything about this kind of stuff back then, and suddenly the veil was lifted, and everything started speaking to me, And the vitamins, my dad brought out this box of vitamins, and he said, I think that your body needs these things to help you eat. I had done some medical testing, and they couldn't find anything wrong with my stomach and my digestive system, but I was only able to eat a few bites at a time and was losing a lot of weight. And so these vitamins that my dad brought out, he had like 20 vitamins that he suggested I start on, but they started talking to me, and there were 5 of them that were just saying, take me, and so I took these 5 vitamins, and I was directed to sit in, this voice started talking to me, told me to sit in the sunlight as much as possible, and within about 3 days, I was shoveling food in my mouth, and I just couldn't believe that I was eating all of a sudden. And that continued on for a week. I was given a lot of information, and I was told to sit down and meditate regularly throughout the week, and this white light would run down my body. It would roll down my body and like shoot out of my body in these little pinpricks. And I just let it happen. And when that ended, this circular doorway closed in front of my eyes, and I was given a final sentence that told me this experience was given to me in this way and in this time for my ever-changing future. And so I thought something great was going to happen, and but I went into an extremely ever-changing future. We ended up going into a crisis situation because my husband became suddenly permanently disabled. This is years later, and I ended up separating from my husband after 4.5 years after his disability. And on that day, when I made that choice to change, my second experience started, and that lasted for a month. I also received a lot of helpful information about myself, information about the world that helped me understand the world differently and be able to manage myself in it better because I had a better understanding of it. My prayer to God was always, I hope there is one, first of all, and if there is a God, please tell me the rules of the game down here because I don't understand. I will play, I will do whatever I'm supposed to do, but I don't understand what I am supposed to do. Life did not make sense to me, and therefore I was always scared of life, and I believed that I was rejecting life at a very inner, deep level, and I believe that's why I was having problems with the way that my body systems functioned. So that experience went on for 1 month, and then I went to work in a domestic violence crisis agency. I had gotten myself through school, and everything was great for about 2.5 years, and then all of a sudden the veil was lifted again, and I knew exactly what was going on. I had read some near-death experience books because it was the only thing that I could find that was anything similar to what I was experiencing after my first and second experiences. But then the third time, I didn't want it to stop, and I told God, I want to go all the way this time, and I had no idea what I was asking for. The first two ended very pleasantly, but this one, it was great. When the veil was lifted, it was in, I call it the heaven state. Information comes in from everywhere, very useful information, very practical information that I can apply to myself and my life, a lot of healing, a lot of things about the world, the evolution of the world, the evolution of mankind and a soul, and things like this that helped me to understand the whole system of life differently and taught me how to function in it personally. And but when the heaven state ended after 2 months, instead of it ending very pleasantly, I smashed into my own subconscious and what I call and it was like it was tied in with the mass consciousness, and I just started losing my functioning. I started going through this emotional purging process. I was told every step of the way what was happening, that I was going through a healing process. My brain lobes were disconnected so that they could be reprogrammed with what I had seen on the other side. My subconscious was reprogrammed when I was in this heaven state, But when I came back into my old wiring and the mass conscious thought form, it was like running into a brick wall. And so this purging started, and I was told I was going through an unraveling of the mental illnesses that I had created to survive in this world. They had to be undone so that I could become my authentic self. The mental illnesses were based on basically doing what I thought I should be doing according to society and religion and things like that. And so I had kind of mangled my psyche and my body at a cellular level to be able to perform up to these expectations rather than making my choices and choosing my lifestyle according to my authentic needs. And so it was very difficult. It was a very difficult process and very confusing, and I wasn't expecting it at all. And I got really scared. This continued for 8 months, and I finally reached out to my family members, and I told them, something's wrong. This is not stopping. I was completely losing my functioning. I couldn't read. I couldn't write. I could always do math. I could barely do routine things, and I ended up quitting my job, and my family was very supportive. I stayed home from work for 2 years to relearn what I was shown on the other side, and it was very in depth and very detailed, a completely different way of understanding myself and how to function, how to know my body and my emotional system, and how to function with that instead of against it. And so it took me 2 years to basically learn myself until I felt safe enough to step out into the world. As I ended up with PTSD type of symptoms, which I don't even fully understand where they came from and why, but I went through a rebirthing process, and I lost all my functioning. And when I came back at the end of this, it was like being an infant. I lost my memories of my old life in this body. I lost all reference points in the world. I lost my functioning, and I was just like this point of consciousness back in this body, terrified because I knew I had 2 kids to support. I knew that I couldn't work, I couldn't drive, and I am one of the very lucky people that had the support of my family. My mom paid my bills for 2 years. She believed in me. She believed in what we call God, and in my experience and in all the information that I was being given. And so I was able to regroup and relearn and reteach myself the physical parts of this world and get my footing. And I've done very, very well once I got my footing. And that's why it's really important that people get support. Because once I got my footing, I have been able to rebuild my life based on my authentic self. And my life is entirely different now. It very much matches who I am. It's a lot healthier lifestyle, a lot more abundance and healthy relationships. And so it's all been very good. I would never want to go through it again. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through, but I would never trade it for anything because it's what allowed me to finally become myself and finally know how to function as myself in this very difficult, confusing world.
Wow, it's absolutely an incredible experience, and you definitely are one of the fortunate few who have the support of their family members. Your mom and dad seem very enlightened and understanding, beautiful people to support you through it and give you the space and time to come to your own understanding and process it. I'm so happy that you had that, because it goes so differently for so many people. You've mentioned some really interesting things here that I want to come back to. We're going to let our next guest introduce himself, but Elizabeth, thank you for introducing yourself so eloquently and sharing so deeply of your own experience. You've been doing this quite a bit now. Elizabeth Rose is assists telephone person. She answers the phone for us, and works with experiencers as they call in needing support and resources. She visits with them and helps them through that initial process. And she's also a moderator on Assist's private experiencer forum as well. So she's done a lot of work in the field in the last few years with experiencers as well. Mike, I want to get to Mike Wadsworth as well. Mike is somebody that I met through Assist as well. Mike went through our peer support and discussion group facilitator training and also presented at the annual conference for Assist in 2019. Mike, welcome.
Hello there. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Mike. Thank you so much for being on. I'd like you to share your story. You were working in the world, in a very worldly way when your experience happened, and I'd like you to share with people what your experience was, what you were doing prior to your experience, and how your life has changed at this point.
Sure. So currently I'm 29. My biggest experience occurred about a little over 2.5 years ago. But it really started in college, as it does for a lot of people, where I felt like I was living in complete unawareness up until that point, until I went to college. I didn't have any sort of spiritual presence, like my parents didn't take us to church or anything. So there was a complete lack of that in my upbringing. So I sort of felt like I was living in a tunnel vision until I got to college. Not an uncommon story. Started entering other states of consciousness through the use of substances. Simply, mostly it was marijuana for me. And that was when I had college English classes that were introducing me to Emerson and Thoreau. And that was the beginning of starting to notice things that were unseeable and making these connections between things, these synchronicities, just noticing things that I wasn't noticing before. And what for me was the process of growing awareness, which was just simply questioning why I thought certain ways. Stepping into perhaps a different altered state of consciousness when I would use this, certain substances, that would be like, oh, I'm caring less about things that maybe I should care less about. And that started this process of questioning, why do I think the way I do? When these feelings come up, it's triggering these patterns of thinking. And sometimes I don't notice it until it's already 2, 3, 4 steps down along, as if I'm some robot, that emotions are the fuel and they trigger these patterns. And am I really in control of what's going on here? And where does this come from? So I was in school for journalism. I wanted to be in sports broadcasting. I did that all through college. But there was this piece within me that was discovering, that was dismantling these patterns that I had learned. I feel like I had learned and absorbed from around me, and getting to this truer sense of myself that was connected to music and the things I do now that no one knew anything about. And I felt like I was protecting for some reason. So I sort of had that feeling that I not necessarily shouldn't have been on the path that I was, but I had that inkling that this isn't really what I'm supposed to do. But I followed it anyway because I had more questioning and more unraveling of my patterns and where things came from. I had more of that to do. And so I was still operating out of this fear-based, I need someone else's story. I was living under someone else's story of, I need to go to school, I'm going to get this job, I'm going to live in a professional world, and I'm going to keep doing this thing. I should just keep doing this thing. So through the first 5 or 6 years, I worked in journalism. I was working in television as a producer, first in South Carolina, and then I was having a lot of success. Still a part of this old way, this old patterns, this achievement-oriented mindset that I was in. That was what defined me. I continued to follow that said, I'll give this another chance. I made a jump past what would have been my second job into like sort of a third job market, in my early 20s. And the more I kept doing that, I was also in television news, which I felt like exacerbated a lot of things for me, as in I was seeing the patterns of reaction that we would take in events that happen around us in daily life and the things in the news, and it was all of this. It was the same patterns of reacting, the same, it was still in this fear-based paradigm. I guess that's the simplest way I could describe it to be succinct.
Mm-hmm.
It was exacerbating a lot for me. And so all this questioning was still going on in the background, and I got to a point where I knew I had to leave it behind, and I left it behind. I tried something else. I didn't really like that for a few months, and then I saved up money to take time off, but I was jobless, and I was forced to face this. I have no job propping up my identity. Who am I? People they're gonna think I'm some like low life, all these still negative patterns, but it was part of like pulling back, continuing to pull back these, what I would call like these last few layers of this egoic self. And the simplest, my biggest experience was I needed to experience the anxiety that was this fear-based anxiety that was out of my conscious awareness. I needed to experience that entirely without any crutch, any substance, anything to self-soothe, so that I could see it for what it was, but I could also see it for what it wasn't. And it was nothing to fear. Everything I thought I was protecting this is just my experience. I thought there was the center of myself, but it wasn't anything unique. It wasn't this individualized thing. It was this space that was already everything around me. My experience, the biggest shift and sort of otherworldly experience I had is this was occurring. I was sitting on a couch. I was staring at this colored rug, and the rug started warping, and everything around that vision was blurring. And then I was in the hallway on the ground crying. The next moment I was sort of, I guess, back into my body. And ever since then, I sort of had this deep calm, and it's like it felt like a massive download of information that took almost 2 years to process, as I've related differently over that time. So that's sort of evidence to me of how long it took, and I feel like I'm continuing to integrate. I had a new paradigm to process things that maybe before made sense to me and I was drawn towards, but I didn't really understand what they meant. Things like, how my response to things literally defines the event or the thing that's occurring. Things that now put me in complete control of my life, and I process this world around me completely differently. I sort of went almost 2 full years of just sort of in this bliss state of kind of wandering around, wondering what I was supposed to do with this, like watching how I perceived myself to be previously, of like watching people unfold and create this drama and chaos, and it's like I can see how this is happening, and they don't even know why they're doing or what they're doing. And it was just very weird thing for me to experience. It's not like I felt like I have no at all feeling like I have anything that no one else has access to, or that I am above or below any other person whatsoever, or that I have really anything to say to anyone about what they should, the steps they should take and what they should do with their lives and their journey. But it was just this strange, like seeing all this chaos around me unfold and feeling like I was at a point with myself where I know I'm human, and I know that all the emotions, which are these superpowers that we feel are part of the human experience. And those are never going to go away, but I can certainly become conscious of choosing how I respond to them and which patterns I feed. And I'm not perfect at it at all, but I'm certainly more aware in moments and can be more intentional about how I respond to the happenings of daily life and the things that I feel. So it was just my awareness grew, bringing more of my unconscious patterns into conscious awareness by just questioning my patterns of thinking and ridding myself of the negativity, which were the shameful, guilty patterns of thinking that I had. I never perceived anything that I was doing to hurt people externally, but I was really limiting myself from my great potential. And there are lots of us out there who it's very difficult when certain things come into awareness and we realize, oh, wow, I did all these things to other people, and now I suddenly see how bad they were, and I wouldn't do that anymore. And all the shame and guilt that may come with that, that's maybe, I would say more difficult how I experienced it. So I guess I'll just to keep from rambling any further about it. That seems like a good place to stop and where I am now in terms of how I relate to things that happen in life.
Thank you, Mike. There's so much here. First, I want to say the self-inquiry that you took yourself into unaided by any external teacher. There are many people that practice self-inquiry practices who are students of Advaita, some of the Eastern traditions, or through Buddhism, Advaita, and in the yogic tradition, even in the shamanic traditions, where you're really examining the self and examining the motivations of the self and what is operating separate of the higher self. And what strikes me is that you took yourself into that very demanding practice. It takes an incredible amount of courage to really go into that Advaita practice. Some people pronounce it Advaita, some pronounce it Advaita, but it's very demanding, and people usually have teachers and guides that have walked that path before them that help them process that, and you didn't have that, and the fact that you've made it through that part, and that you were able to sit with the guilt and the shame that absolutely does come up in an awakening process at some point. I think it's striking. I'd like to start a dialogue about some of the things that you guys have mentioned in your individual experiences that are actually common. So I just also want to let our listeners know, we had a couple of people call in. Please feel free to call back in. We'll be taking callers a little bit later in the show. So please do feel free. The call-in number is 563-999-3697. Again, that number is 563-999-3697. Elizabeth, you had spoken about getting in touch, kind of slamming back into your subconscious and even the mass consciousness, and experiencing what other people had experienced, the difficult challenges of humanity. I'm wondering, you had a difficult time getting out of it. It took like 8 months where you finally kind of said, Uncle, like, I need help here. Could you share, was it similar to, processing the guilt and the shame of a new awareness when we do come into awareness of some of the choices that we made? Was it similar to that, or was it different?
Oh, yes. I had to face everything, Elizabeth. It was very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had to face everything that wasn't really aligned with what I had seen on the other side, which is my authentic self. So everything that was not aligned with that, I had to face it. I had to go through it and feel it, and it was very painful. But it was the only way, was to just go through it, feel it, and accept it, and move on from it, learn from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so much of what Mike said kind of resonates with what you experienced. This is, some people have the mantra, good vibes only. And I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but maybe we need to. Like, good vibes only can be a very dangerous position to hold on to. It only takes you to a certain level of development in your psycho-spiritual development. And when we're in the process of awakening and evolving our consciousness, either through choice, through dedicated practice, or spontaneously, like you both had this spontaneous awareness that, wow, there's something here. Mike, you called it an inkling that's not right. It takes an incredible amount of emotional and mental strength, and we have to build our psychology as we're building our spiritual self as well. Mike, you had said that you needed to experience this fear that you had been, the fear-based programming that you talked about. Can you share why you believe you needed to experience that?
Well, when I
why was
fully
part of the
experienced it, can you all still hear me? I just want to make sure I'm not cutting anybody off.
Yep.
Okay. Well, because when I finally did, what I experienced was the sort of oneness singularity of things, that the things I was avoiding was not, I was fearing, wasn't actually like some opposite separate thing from the things I did want. It was just like it was like the magnet. It was just like the other side of it. I guess this sort of gets into maybe, I guess how I'd heard of it from other people was sort of Alan Watts, how he talked about things like psychology in terms of day and night are they're not opposite separate things. Like someone on the other side of the planet right now has daytime. It's they're one other side of the coin, or simply we hear a constant sound and it sounds like it's one never-ending thing, but it's actually a complete switch between on off, sound no sound, sound no sound, that creates that perceived constant. So when I did experience it, the fear, it was something I was trying to avoid and didn't understand why, and it actually I needed to be able to sit with those things that I did fear and accept that as readily as I did the positive things and that occurred, and then I was like, I had this view and I wrote this down sort of right afterward. It's like, there's a tree sitting outside my window in my driveway and it's a beautiful day and I see it blossoming in all these colors and I might smile at the tree and accept how beautiful it is. But like the next day, if I'm having a tough day and then I'm not paying attention and I back my car into that tree, I might immediately just like trigger into screaming at this tree, yelling at it, being like, I should have, cut this down so I didn't run into it. And it's like, well, why am I, what's different about, this tree is just sitting there. Like, I'm projecting this thing upon it. And so I'm not handling that moment very well because I'm not allowing the bad thing, this thing I fear, this negative thing. I'm not holding it, giving it the same weight as the good things going on. And it's certainly not a separate thing. I'm just making it that. So anyway, I guess to get back, why did I need to face and experience those things that I fear? Because when I finally did, I realized that it wasn't a separate thing that I was avoiding. I experienced that oneness, that it was just the other side of the coin. It was all part of the same. And just like I only know good days because of bad, and not that what I'd say bad days, not so good days because of other ones that are so good. I only know one without the other. So
yeah.
I'll stop there.
Yeah. So the fullness of your experience is complete. And it also sounds like, am I wrong in hearing, Mike, that you have less resistance to what might be considered bad now compared to before your experiences?
Sure. And I'm challenged in plenty of moments, whether they, there's, even if they're very small, as to where I'm angry right now because I'm feeling this thing as it relates to, whether it's, I don't want to feel a certain feeling about something. I just want to I'm very practical. I want to just move past certain things. I know what's not useful, but as I'm encountering it on a daily basis now, it's like I have to get more in tune with, really, am I really feeling this thing, or am I just like putting it aside so I can be practical? Maybe that's the Cancerian in me that wants to just be like, okay, this is not useful. Let me be pragmatic and move, use this in the right way, but I also can't ignore, So that's how I experience it now. It's still a challenge on a daily basis and little things. But yeah, definitely just kind of accepting things. Anything that happens is just, well, there it is. Now let me make it what it is by what I do now.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's actually something real and genuine and not something you're forcing. You're not missing anything in the experience, it sounds like, as well. And Elizabeth, and both you and Mike have shared things that people might say, oh, you were in the middle of a psychosis. The vitamins were talking to you. That's not normal, right? And but what we find is that as we have these expanded experiences, that we do connect. This is what I'm talking about when I say that most experiencers have the capacity to have an experience of the non-ordinary in ordinary situations and with ordinary objects in life, where you have an expanded experience of it and can actually communicate, where things actually communicate with you. And at Assist, we train people, mental health professionals, on the difference between psychosis and a spiritual emergence or emergency experience. And one of those things is that, they're short-lived, they don't happen, and that you know that is not normal, but yet it's the most normal thing in the world. I remember communicating, hearing the sun talk to me one day when I was working out in the yard, and it was a living being of God. It was a creation of God and had a form of consciousness and communication. And I'm curious, when you were experiencing that part of the experience where an inanimate object was communicating with you, what was that like for you?
Well, I have to say it's not inanimate because everything's alive.
That's right. We know. That's right.
I didn't realize that everything is just as alive as I am, up to that point in my life. So I just had to throw that in there. Everything has information in it. And for whatever reason in these states, that information can start flowing to us, nonverbal, information. And yeah, it could have been seen as psychosis, but it worked. And that's the thing. And everything that I've been shown on the other side, I've applied it to my life, and I've gotten amazing results from it. And if we are able to tap into this knowledge that is encoded, it's like it's encoded in the tree and the leaf and the vitamins, if we're able to tap into that. So yeah, it definitely could be considered psychosis by people watching, but if the person finds himself in this state and starts getting information, I just logically tested it, and I didn't just blindly follow it either. I tested everything that I was shown to see what the results were, so I could prove to myself that it was real, and I've got wonderful results from it. I think there might have been another part of your question that I'm forgetting.
Oh no, I think it's amazing, and it's absolutely incredible, and that to have this is an example of a spiritually transformative experience where you've got something like this that is considered very non-ordinary, and yet you are in that experience, have the capacity to be present with it and to test it. And I just think that's very significant and important for people to know that it's not necessarily a state where you lose your ability to make choice all the time. And so I thought I just wanted to touch on that. That was very interesting. And this fact that, both you and Mike talk about, Mike, you can now see people's control drama, right? You haven't made yourself into a teacher or a guru or some kind of, assistant and say, hey, I can see exactly what's going on with you. Why don't you come over here and I'll show you how to do it? You're neither one of you have like an aggrandized sense of self or importance, and yet you're still very helpful. You work with other people and are helpful. I think that's also another key kind of marker of an integrated spiritual experience where we're not aggrandizing or demoralizing ourselves either. And it's like a neutralized ego, you might say. The ego is still there. That individuated sense of self is still there, but it's not either inflated or deflated. I'd like to get into
that.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, the thing is, before it's like I couldn't see before. I couldn't see clearly, but there's a reason, I believe, for those periods of life when we're blinded, because we're gathering information, we're learning what we don't want. And so my experience has helped me respect people more and more, and it's helped me learn what true respect is and how to show that and how to give that to people. They're all just as brilliant, with just as difficult situations as I have, and they need to be respected for where they are on their path, and supported where they are. So to criticize anybody or to think they're at some different level, that's only harming them farther. It's not elevating them or giving them the space to learn and grow, because we all go through this same process one way or another.
Right. Yeah, we do. And I think something else that is interesting for people that have gone through these experiences that both you and Mike have spoken to about seeing the old way of being and how it's not in alignment with what you're being shown is your authentic self. It's like we get the opportunity to do that without having to die and having a life review and look back and not change it. One of the things that I see kind of universally that these experiences are for is we have an opportunity to change, to shift our behavior, to be a source of light and peace and assistance to people on the planet or the planet itself. We don't have to die. And some people who do believe in reincarnation believe, you die and you find out what you did wrong the first, that time, and you come back and you try it again, or you develop good karma to come back and have a redo. But in many spiritual experiences, they don't have to do that. They get that information and they get to live life out and not have to be reborn, which I think is in a different body, I should say. We go through a rebirth, but you don't have to have a different body. Now, Elizabeth, you did actually, your whole body got reprogrammed, rewired, it seems like. So
yeah. All my systems got rebooted. All my systems disconnected and reconnected. And I did go through a very physical rebirthing process along with the spiritual rebirthing process, and then coming back into my body, and actually learned to crawl and walk, and I went through all the stages. I learned what it would feel like to be a baby born into this world, helpless and terrified.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. I'd be curious as to how many other people had that similar experience. Before we go any further, I wanted to share. Mike is now he's a singer-songwriter full-time, and he's written this beautiful song called "On the Other Side" that just such a poignant song and struck me deeply. Many people have near-death experiences because of failed suicide attempts. And the Assist founder, Elaine Stout, is one of them. And I personally have worked with people on the other side, communicated with people on the other side who have committed suicide. And so this song touched me personally in my own personal work. And so, Mike, could you share the inspiration for this song? How did this song come to you?
Yeah, so I'll be short. I wrote it the week, I think it was when Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade both committed suicide within like the same week or so. And so after being at a point where I certainly was suicidal in the sense of like that I was okay not waking up the next day. Like I wasn't actually going to do anything. I didn't feel like I was. So to have a therapist tell me, no, those are suicidal thoughts, I was like, oh, okay, that's what that is. Just like very analytical about it. But after being at that point and then going through the experiences that I did and then having this new paradigm and this new frame, I wanted to conceptualize like when they got to the other side and look back, what they may think about it. And the song also may relate. I've had people, come up to me and say, oh, I went through, that's about like going through a divorce, isn't it? Like I was like, oh, I guess you could look at it that way. Like whether it's just the other, for her, it was, she was in some state of mind and it controlled her relationship. And when she was out, she saw things another way. And so it may just be about on the other side of another state of mind that you were in. So it can relate, I guess, in any of those ways. But that was why I wrote it. So.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And I'm going to ask you guys to mute yourself while I play the song. I'm getting a little bit of feedback from somebody. But it also matches my experience of working with and talking to people on the other side who have decided to leave the planet for the last time. All right, so here's On the Other Side by Mike Wadsworth.
Today was the day, why they never say. The pain always resisted, it only grew, they couldn't take it. Dirty layers on their love seemed too much to overcome, so they made up their minds to suffer for the last time. To fall was freedom, to have it all was to say goodbye. But on the other side, they could see it was all a lie. Everything they'd once believed was just some story made by you and me. To feel eternal love was the first taste up above. There's no pain in this game, they finally saw the truth on the other side. All the little boys and girls know the real story of the world. From chasing balls to little dolls, the bigger things can't beat them. But somewhere down the line, I bought another's pain and made it mine. Buried deep down in this head, no wonder I'd wished I was dead. The call was an angel, but all I really wanted was to say goodbye. But on the other side, they could see it was all a lie. Everything I once believed was just some story made just by me. To feel eternal love was the first taste up above. There's no pain in this game. I finally saw the truth on the other side. Wishing to come back now. She said there's so much that I need to tell you about. They're sending a kiss every chance they get, 'cause it didn't take too long to know that on the other side they could see it was all a lie. Everything they once believed was just some story made by you and me. To feel eternal love is the first taste up above. There's no pain in this game. I finally saw the truth on the other side. On the other side.
Mike, thank you. That was so beautiful. And I mean, it brings tears to my eyes every time I listen to it. Mike, could you tell people how to find you if they'd like to have you come play for them or play a concert? How can people get a hold of you?
Sure. My website is can you also hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My website is mikewadsworth.com. MikeWadsworth.com. And yeah, you can contact me through there. Or I have a few of the songs up there that you can listen to as well. And there's links to social media if you want to follow along, and at least, or just put an email in and at least know when stuff comes out or when anything is happening. So.
Excellent. And when we do the YouTube video on this, which you can find on my YouTube channel at Elizabeth Sabet on YouTube, we'll have all of the links to Mike's work there as well. And so I'd like to close with today what your new world view is, how you see the world differently. You both have said that you see things differently now. Elizabeth, could you tell us how you see the world differently?
Yes, can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, great. How I see the world differently, I don't see it as a bad place anymore. I have a better understanding of why we are here and that each individual has to walk their path and go through very similar things as what I've gone through. It seems that through our childhood, we're programmed because and I don't know how to do it differently. I know there's a lot of wonderful people working in the education system to try to not squash the child's spirit. And I know parents are in very difficult situations dealing with survival, which is one of the really big challenges of this planet, survival. And then we get desperate, because we've got to pay our bills and feed our children. So it's very difficult to raise a child without squashing the spirit. Plus, children are so out of control, at times with the emotions are so strong and they don't understand what's going on. So, but I think it's part of what the world is for a spirit to come into a body and be put in these difficult situations and have all of these expectations put on it, and then have to work your way out of that. I think it's what strengthens each individual's identity and gives the person the opportunity to find their authentic self and become that
in the face of so many difficult situations, it really makes you believe in yourself no matter what and never want to give it up again once you've found that, that core part of yourself. And so I just view the world, I don't see it as bad. And because I have an understanding of the systems of creation, the world and life and myself, and I was taught on the other side how to maneuver with all these different parts of being a human being and how to create what I want in this world that matches me. And it works. It works so well that I use it, I test it and see if it works. And so I know that it's available for everybody if they can tap into who they really are and get in their own natural flow. So all of that has just helped me to just not be as scared of the world and think that the world is a bad place. It's really beautiful, beautiful learning ground for us.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And Elizabeth, I'm going to have to bring you both back on. We have so much to talk about, so much more to talk about. But could you tell people how to get a hold of you, because you are creating a website, or is it already made?
No, it's not. So I don't have any specific information yet. But thank you.
Yeah, we're going to bring you back on because Elizabeth is about ready to launch and go out into the world and be doing her work in the world. So we'll be bringing you back on, Elizabeth. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. Then, Mike, in just a few minutes, we've got about 3 minutes left. Could you tell us how your worldview and how you see the world now after your experiences?
Yeah. So very, very simply, I believe that we come here to move from a pattern of mindset that is self-centered to one that is, I am exactly equal to everyone else and everything else around. And those self-centered patterns, in my experience, was the root of all suffering. And so the suffering for me was the means of figuring out I'm not in alignment. And alignment for me is it's just responding. Like, someone else gets in a car accident, I feel bad for them, I would help them. If it happens to me, if I'm responding, why me, why this, it happened on this day, all these things, that's like self-centric, like this, how this thing is affecting me. And it's very hard, we have to do these things for ourselves, like little things every day. We do have to do certain things for ourselves, but in response to the things that happen in life, I view that we're here to move from one to the other and get out of that sort of egoic, I guess, sense of patterns of how we're operating. I really simply, we're in a complex human body, but it's limited in the sense that, like, the little baby is potentially taking in all of these stimuli. And then once they're sort of that subconscious machine of the brain that needs to develop to allow us to function gets built, we sort of deflect some of these energies and stimuli and these otherworldly presences that are around us, because we kind of we have to operate in that. And so it's so critical how those patterns, as we're children are growing, how those patterns are built. And a lot of times it's built by patterns absorbed from around them that maybe aren't consciously put into the world and are unaware. So I'll leave it there.
That's beautiful. We're going to be talking next week about near-death experiences, and the week after that, we're going to be talking about children's spiritual experiences. So thanks, Mike. That was a great introduction, yes, as to what happens with children and why we lose our ability to have access to the nonlinear. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Mike, for joining me today. I look forward to more. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.